It's the SKOR North Twins Show. Baseball!
Very excited for whatever Judd's random baseball take of the day is. I feel like a lot of options on the table for Judd's random baseball take today, which we will get to.
Oh yeah.
But man, Judd, Dex, you were having a good old time in Iowa. You were enjoying adult beverages. You were at Diamond Joe at one point. So Judd and I actually had a separate text thread about some of the Twins articles that were being written about. This is the first time all three of us have been able to talk about this, but it feels like over the weekend, a bunch of prominent local media members and platforms came out strongly defending the Pohlad, like the Pohlad legacy, and the vitriol from fans and certain other sections of the media. It almost feels like now there's a wave the other way of pushing back against that criticism, if you will. I want to read for you guys just a couple snippets from three different prominent local columnists. Our guy, Patrick Royce, is one of them. Jim Suhan from the Star Tribune. And then Adam Platt from Twin Cities Business Magazine. So feel free to interrupt and stop me here. But let's start with Adam Platt from Twin Cities Business Mag, if that pleases the court here.
Let's do it. Absolutely.
Okay. The Pohlads lacked a media playbook, but brought the region 2 championships, which no other local sports franchise other than the Lynx has done. The family would surely love to find a buyer who takes a less disciplined approach to business than it does, and bring the region an era of big spending baseball dominance. After all, they are not going anywhere, the Pohlads. They live here. I've seen many sports owners depart over the years, in this market and others. I've seen a lot of fan bases say good riddance, often with cause. But if that's the take on the day the Pohlads turn over the keys to Target Field, it's because fans simply lack interest in a nuanced understanding of the last 4 decades. It may not have been the best of times, but it was hardly the worst of times. Okay.
Dex, any thoughts?
Dude, that is the most Minnesota way of looking at things I have ever heard. Well, we're not one. We're not at the bottom, but you need to be grateful for being right here in the middle. And yes, they did bring 2 championships. Okay, yes, that happened. I'm also 30 years old, and you also, if we want to get into this younger demographic, none of those people were around then. No one was around then. So these last 30 years, it's been frugal as hell. What are we defending over that? We're gonna say, oh, but they won division titles and it was great, but yeah, and they also refused to push chips in when they probably should have to go on a deeper playoff run. To be okay with mediocrity of being not the best but not the worst is the most Minnesota thing, and I love my roots here in Minnesota, but God, I hate that passive-aggressive way of looking at life. I can't stand that. It as you can tell, it fires me up.
Oh, I love this. This is great. By the way, we got 2 more snippets from 2 different.
I want you to read, because I think there's a common thread between what you just read from Platt and what Suhan wrote. So if you could go to the Suhan one next, because to me those come from the same position.
Sure.
Which I think in this case, I think is a very dangerous one.
So Suhan writes, the loudest voices in local fandom and media are thrilled because the next owners will undoubtedly spend more and thus win more, and will never consider threatening to move the franchise. That's the dubious premise. I'm thrilled because the Pohlad selling could clear the air of the most illogical and simplistic conversations surrounding a complex sport. The median angry Twins fan has used the Pohlad name as a one-word, one-stop shop for answers to every problem. And then I'll give you... Oh, go ahead. You want to jump in? Otherwise, I'll give you Royce and we can...
Oh, no, stop there, because I think that... Platt and Suhan to me are saying the same thing, and in this case, I hate what they are saying. And I actually wrote about this on my Substack last week before these guys did this. It's the old, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. If the Pohlads are gone, the Pohlads... Okay, first of all, They won 2 World Series. The last one was in 91. More recently, be careful what you wish for. Carl Pohlad had his hand out for a cash grab to contract the franchise. I think we all know what contraction means. It means bye-bye. You are gone. The franchise was going to be gone if this worked. The Expos and Twins were going to be contracted. Okay? So that's within the last 24 years. Then they get a stadium, they win a division title, and immediately go in the crapper. Not for a year, but for multiple years until they sort of finally start to pull out of it, and then they go backwards again. And it basically takes a disaster for them to make any changes, which they finally do. And by the way, the ownership group, don't forget this too. Just as far as like, oh, well, be careful what you wish for. The ownership group, in the midst of that disastrous, what was it, 2016 campaign, when they got off to the awful start and were just a complete dumpster fire.
Was it the 0-9 where they were like,
yeah,
0-9
and then they were just like awful. The ownership group went to the GM, Terry Ryan, and said, we got to make a change here. You know, we're going to fire Paul, which was not fair to Paul, but okay, you're going to make a change. Terry said, no. I'm going to fire myself. Let me take the fall here. So basically they're being told by...
Terry did the noble thing, which is, guys, you know...
But I mean, what type of feel do you have for your organization if you're being told by your G? I mean, everyone should have probably been fired off of that. But the point is, be careful what you wish for. First of all, they're not moving. That's a non-starter. They have a lease. They have a new ballpark. Baseball will not let them move. They're not
going
to
15 media market. Yeah.
The Timberwolves concern me a bit because they need a new building. Okay, so at least that one can. That's like a legitimate. Okay, they're going to need this. The Twins got their building. There's no question here. They're not going anywhere. No one's going to come here and move them. But the other thing is, so you're telling me, be careful what you wish for. What am I going to get an ownership group that's more disinterested than the Pohlads were?
Amen. I got more on that too. I'm going to piggyback off that, but let me just throw Royce's, and we've got the week to talk about some of this, Pat. Put a pin, circle back. So Royce said, Minnesota's baseball fan base, which has been overrated. Actually, you know what? We did this with him last week, and he just put it in a column form.
Of course, because that's how he rolls.
Minnesota baseball fan base, which has been overrated for its loyalty for 55 years, is taking a chest-thumping victory lap for driving the cheap Pohlads to sell. You showed them, folks, forcing Minnesota's second family of Twins ownership to get rid of a business it bought for $44 million 4 decades ago for $1.3 billion, maybe more. And surely you'll get those new owners that pay the $1 billion plus for the team, take the $40 to $50 million hit on a lost regional TV revenue, and then we'll add $100 million in payroll, right? Sarcastically, obviously.
Right.
And that will get you maybe to go to an actual ball game? Probably not. Great complainers, mediocre baseball fans. Twins fans. I would say that if you give fans in any sport in this, there's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of things to spend your money on.
Yeah.
If you give fans a reason to buy into a great sports community, a winning team on a regular basis, they will show up. They will 100% show up. But this is why, just to piggyback off what Jubb was saying, this sort of be careful what you wish for. Be careful. You better be careful. It wasn't Adam Platt. I'll read the last part of Adam Platt's part here. It may not have been the best of times, but it was hardly the worst of times, which if that's Declan's right. That's a classic Minnesota. We're going to hey, you better be careful because it's pretty bad, but it could get worse. So let's make sure we don't upset the apple cart here.
And just quickly, it was the worst of times. The Pohlad family wanted to put the team in the ground. What gets worse than that? A judge, the late great Harry Crump, saved him. So, like, what is worse than the owners saying, "Uncle, I give up.
Yeah,
go ahead and contract the team." That's the worst.
So, I want a couple things here. I want to echo something that Declan said, which is 1991. Let's make a couple things clear here. Number one, the Pohlads, billionaires, do not deserve grace on the way out. Number two, I, as a 35-year-old, Declan's 30. I don't care about the 1991 World Series anymore. The 87 and 91 World Series are 2 generations ago. It doesn't matter. Are we still sitting here talking about the Gopher football team? Well, they won the 1960 national championship. No, because it was generations ago. Dude, 1991 was before the internet was public. So let's stop. Well, they brought 2 championships. Yeah, they brought 2 If you're 40 years old, you don't even remember the second championship. How long? It's like whenever you hear the Bears talk about the 1985, like the Bears have done nothing in 40 years, and yet we still bring back like Mike Singletary and whatever. So let's stop hanging our hat on the 1991 World Series. But if you want to talk about legacy, okay, post 1991, which is largely the kids and then eventually the third generation running this franchise, okay? 21st in win percentage over the past 30 years. The Pohlads, by the way, not the Twins, but the Pohlads aren't like detached from the Twins. They own and operate the Twins. 21st in win percentage over the past 30 years. 2 playoff series wins since 1991. 9 playoff game wins since 1991. How does that stack up? So 9 wins for the Twins in the playoffs since 1991. The Braves have 82. I'll take the top markets out. I won't even let's not even talk about the Red Sox, the Yankees, the top 5 markets. The Giants, if you're a top 5 market, we'll leave you out of this conversation. Payroll, right? The Braves have 82. The Astros, 77. The Cardinals have 75. The Guardians have 54 playoff wins since 1991. The Tigers have 29. The Rays have 28. The Diamondbacks have 28. The Royals have 25. 3 times as many as the Twins. They've had 2 90-win seasons in 15 years at Target Field. As Judd said, they tried to contract the team 25 years ago. And then, when the franchise finally hits a peak again after winning a playoff series, ownership bails on the franchise. Ownership reduces payroll and then starts talking about wanting to sell the team, which is their prerogative. But let's not look at all of that data over the course of 30-plus years and now be like, well, you know, they did bring us the 1991 World Series. The Twins have been one of the worst teams in baseball, bottom third of the league win percentage since 1991, and they've been one of the worst playoff performers in the history of baseball since 1991. They don't deserve grace. It's okay for this. We don't need to like get all Minnesota conscience and guilty here. They've been bad as owners largely, other than letting Terry Ryan do his thing from 2001 through 2010.
And why were we fine with, and it was deserved, but we were fine with ripping Glenn Taylor, right? But now in this one, it's like, whoa, slow down a second. It could be worse. Well, one, it really couldn't be worse because they're going nowhere. And 2, you know, to Patrick's point too, the point I hammer is you took away the ability of a lot of people to watch this team. It's 2024. Do you expect them to pull up the radio? Like, I don't understand. Like, do I think that this is the greatest baseball market of all time? Probably not. That's fine. But it's also, to what Phil said, extremely competitive for dollars, period, because there's, you know, theater, there's great things to do here. But let's forget about that. Let's just go with sports. You got the Wild. You got the Wolves, you got the Twins, you got the Vikings, a Division I program here. And you basically told people in 2024, people that are used to being able to watch games of any team that they like, you can't watch them anymore. You know, you can't stream them. And then the Comcast thing, now they're just gone. So how are we supposed to like criticize the fans for saying good riddance, bravo? You know, it's just, but it's a weird campaign. And I feel like Platt and Souhan's pieces were more of like, be very careful here. What are you warning me about? Like, What am I afraid of? That someone's going to come in and care? Oh my God, no, this person fired Rocco and Falvey. How could they? You know, what are we protecting here exactly? Because none of the key components, like Armageddon is the team moves. Not going to happen. They're in a great ballpark. They're going to be doing their own games now.
What if the worst, like, so if we take moving off the table, which I agree with you, they're not moving. Okay, so like if moving's off the table, so they're going to stay here. Well, what's the next worst thing? Well, they might rarely have playoff success. Okay? They might never win 90 games in a season. They've done it twice at Target Field.
They had a 18-game North American record losing streak in the playoffs over 19 years. There were
and nobody talked about it.
Forget
dude.
the World
Nobody
Series.
talked about it.
Forget the age of the last group like me who watched them win 2 World Series. There was a fairly important demo who couldn't remember the last playoff win.
Yeah. Also, like, there's your job as a sports owner, just from a macro perspective. Your job as a sports owner, entertain fans, make sure you have a product that entertains fans, and get the fans to spend money. Like, that's what you're buying tickets,
right?
Maybe, or indirectly watching the games on TV so you can build up ratings and numbers,
right?
And really, like, the 2 main ways to highly entertain fans and get them hooked and spend money are, number 1, win games at a high level, compete at a high level on a regular basis, and just be good a lot. And if you can do that, fans are probably going to show up. Well, the Twins, as we illustrated, haven't done much of that outside of a nice stretch of division titles in the early 2000s. But like the Target Field era, not a ton of winning. The 90s, one of the worst eras of any team in baseball for the Twins post 1991.
Yep.
But number 2 is it'd be great to do that. But number 2 is, at the very least, even if you're not winning at a super high level, make fans feel like they are a part of a great community and building towards something. The Vikings have actually done that magically. Like the Vikings they haven't been to a Super Bowl since the 70s. But fans, because and it's like the Wilfs are in it to make money too, and the NFL protects owners from losing money, unlike Major League Baseball in some ways. But this is the problem. The Pohlads talk about right-sizing the business more often publicly than they talk about wanting to deliver winning at a high level to the fans. And that's a huge part of the reason why Twins fans feel like they're fighting against the ownership. So it's like, well, if you're not going to win at a high level, and it doesn't feel like you really care about winning at a high level, you never make big trades at the trade deadline outside of, it's been one time in 8 years with Derek Falvey that they've made a big aggressive trade at the trade deadline.
Yep.
And like that's the perception, is that ownership to front office is not really all in. Now, we could debate and they might push back as to whether or not that's actually true, but they've done nothing to dispel that feeling from fans. So I'm sorry, like, you guys, you're not winning at a high level and you're not making fans feel like they're a part of. I would even argue that the Twins brand has gotten just kind of stale, like Twins territory. It's like these empty platitudes. Come on, Twins territory. It's like fans see through a lot of this, and fans don't feel like the Pohlads have their back. They feel like Mark and Alex have their back with the Timberwolves. They feel like the Wilfs have their back with the Vikings. There's just been this distance and this lack of connection between Pohlads and fans, and that's on them. That's part of running a sports team as a business, guys.
I think there is a conversation and maybe a dangerous assumption to make that the new owners are going to come in here and pump money into this team. I think that's a legit conversation to have. We should not assume that the new owners are just going to pump money into this team. The state of baseball is in a kind of a crapshoot with TV deals and stuff. I think that is fair to assume. Mm-hmm. But if the other argument of this side is, well, be careful what am I being careful what I'm wishing for here? Right. On the last day of the season, and I know Chip also wrote about this too at the Star Tribune. On the last day of the season, with playoffs, near on the line for the Twins, the Chicago White Sox, the worst team in 100+ years, outdrew Target Field. Be careful what I wish for. What am I so scared of here? I don't think we should assume that the new owners are going to come in and just start pumping cash like Steve Cohen is with the Mets. Dangerous assumption to make. But to assume it could be worse, where's our bar of worse? What is it to me? I don't know what it is.
We did this with the Vikings too, by the way. Be careful what you wish for. Moving off of Kirk Cousins.
Oh, right.
Boy, you're going to be awfully sorry, aren't you, when you don't have Kirk Cousins back there holding the entire franchise together. He left and they're 5-0, and Sam Darnold's higher in the MVP.
I also don't think, like, the spending thing is a nice pie in the sky, but I think the animosity built up towards the Pohlads, yes, that's part, no question about it. But this is a much deeper conversation about the stewards of the franchise actually looking like they care, looking like they're engaged, looking like they're holding people once in a while accountable, look like they are, you cannot get up, and it's a small thing, but it's huge. You cannot allow your GM or Joe Pohlad to get up an hour and a half or two before the last game of a disastrous season ends and just say, everybody's safe. Everybody's safe.
What and even like kind of push back at,
yeah.
Well, wait a second. I know that Derek has an 8-year track record.
This is fans rightfully so being upset, and the payroll thing is the easiest thing to lash out. It's exactly like, the wife's been mad at you holding things in for months, right? And now you do one thing and that just sets it off, and now it's on. But it's not just that thing. It's a bunch of things. The payroll thing is the easiest thing. But Twins fans were literally told throughout the season, coming off a great, fun year, fun end, not a great year, but 2023 was fun, and the end was fun, to buzz off. They were told to buzz off. And I don't think fans are like, okay, why am I really mad? I'm mad because I can't watch them. I'm mad because of this. I'm mad because of that. So, yeah, if they come around to the payroll thing, what they're saying is, we don't think that you really cared. And I got to be honest, I agree with them. I've got the quote right here, 2016, in the midst of one of the most embarrassing years, when they finally told Chip Scoggins, our guy, you know what? Joe or Jim Pohlad will talk. And he talked about the changes, right? Terry's gone now because he stepped down at the end of the season. And Jim talked about, well, I am very familiar with what goes on in this game, the inner workings. In fact, I look at all of the media guides.
That's right.
What is that? What is that message? What is that saying? It means you have no curiosity. It means you're not paying attention. So the payroll thing, I think, is a fallback because it's a big deal to people and it's an easy topic. But if you peel back the onion and remove the layers, a lot of what people are upset about, they're totally legit. They're totally right.
Well, there's a part of the Adam Platt piece that I'll just sort of paraphrase here that is interesting. He essentially says, and he's like educated speculating, but it's obvious that he's been talking to people on background, that he thinks Joe Pohlad is going to be devastated that he's not going to be allowed to continue forward as the front-facing owner of this franchise. But he talked about, Platt did, the dynamic of going from second-generation ownership down to third generation.
Yes.
So when it's Carl and Eloise, and it's their team.
And don't sell her short too. She was into it.
Oh, I would never sell Eloise short.
Don't sell
on this
her short.
podcast.
She was at all the games. But I'm saying she influenced things, I think, in a very positive way because Carl had to care because she cared.
But then you get to second generation, and now it's like, okay, there's a handful of kids, and third generation, and now there's kids. Now you got the grandkids and different people that you've never even heard of in the family. And again, I'm paraphrasing Adam Platt's piece.
Yep.
But he essentially made it seem like there's other members of the family that Twins fans would never have, like if they were walking and ran into him at a grocery store or something, you'd never recognize them.
Nice grocery.
But that they hate the fact that their name is being dragged through the mud.
Yeah.
They don't feel like they are baseball people and stewards of a baseball community. And to just be done with it for $1.5 billion and move forward with your other business ventures. And I don't know how you can, that's probably accurate. That makes a ton of sense.
Yes.
But that's the family. The ownership group is a family. And if the family feels like, we don't really want the smoke of owning a team, and we don't really want our name being dragged through the mud when times are bad, and we don't feel like we're baseball stewards. Okay. Then that makes sense why you're signing the team.
Right. Yeah, no,
but then on the flip side, when I say it doesn't feel like the family cares that much, it doesn't feel like they've been all that curious for a long time, and it doesn't feel like they make a great connection with the fans, and it doesn't feel like they're great stewards of baseball in Minnesota.
Right.
Well, those things seem to be correct.
Right.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be bailing on this team.
But
so I'm not even criticizing them for bailing on the team, but let's deal in reality and call it what it is. Okay, everything that I just said.
But the criticism is aimed at the people that were directly involved, right? So like the ancillary group of Pohlads who are going to like they've got stake in the team, or I don't blame them one bit. They're the smart ones. You know, Joe, it's time. And if Joe's like, I really wanted to do this, this is really going to hurt me. You know, I'd say, Joe, I'd say exactly what I told you guys 3 weeks ago. All right, Joe, we are worth billions. Like we are as a family, like we are set for life. And the only way we won't be set for life is if somebody screws this up. Joe, look at your background. Look at what you've done business-wise. You're a third generation, for the most part, flop. Why would we want you to be running this? Like, we gave you your chance, and let's call a spade, boys. It was a disaster. So, like, I give credit, if Platt is correct, and he probably is, the behind-the-scenes Pohlads are the smart ones. Pull the plug. I actually applaud that. That's what you should do, as opposed to this very much one toe in the pool, right? One toe in. It's a little bit cold. I don't know. Okay, today, no. It's time to move on. I like this.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. Sometimes we debate things on the show and we disagree and we fight about things, but kind of feels like we're all in lockstep that this last minute PR push to
and what's the point?
Defend the like. There's just.
What's the
I
point?
agree. What is the point?
It's just time.
Yeah,
it's time, and there have been a lot of cases, I believe, in the history of especially billion-dollar companies where the third generation is just not it. I mean,
there's also
that's it.
One other factor here is generally this media market is laid back in its criticism of teams, and I mean Sid Hartman kind of led the PR charge legendarily for decades, right?
Aggressively to defend them, exactly.
Yeah, and I keep going back to, let's look at a 30-year sample here. No one is expecting the Twins. We haven't even really bitched about payroll. Like we don't often on this show, because I think we do understand the nuances of the baseball economic system.
Yeah.
So nobody is expecting you to be the best team in Major League Baseball over a 30-year period, or a top 5 highest spending team. Like no one with a brain is debating those things. But for a 30-year period to be bottom third in win percentage, to have a third of the playoff wins as the Tampa Bay Rays and Arizona Diamondbacks, and a tenth of the playoff wins of the Braves, and an eighth of the playoff wins of the Astros and the Cardinals, that goes and only 2 90-win seasons at Target Field.
Yep.
That goes beyond payroll. Like obviously, if you spend more money, you have a better chance of overcoming adversity and whatnot. But like that speaks to how well do you operate a winning high-end sports franchise? And if you're that far behind the Cardinals, media market lower than yours, the Guardians, media market lower than yours, and other like Tampa Bay and the Rays, that's the apples-to-apples comparison. Not the Yankees, not the Phillies, not the Red Sox, not the Cubs, the big market teams.
And Phil, actually, whoever buys this team, if they were to seek our advice, this goes back to the old days.
Clearly they would. I mean,
well, why not? This goes back to a conversation that we had on the radio show years ago. I think here's what's fair. Because yes, you're not going to go out and sign the top starting pitcher or the second one. But the conversation that I think it was in around 2016 when the Cubs won the World Series, and what a guy like Theo Epstein had done, which was, I mean, genius, right? The Red Sox too. But our conversation was between the margins where it's fair to expect to spend and a great hire is Derek Falvey has to be one of the top 3 to 5 people probably at what he does. Like,
and objectively, where would he rank? I don't have an answer.
I don't know, but the point is,
ownership
I think,
should have a general idea, though.
Right, but I mean,
that's your core business.
If you buy the Twins and you give a damn, you are going to find the best people possible to run your team, starting with that job, right? Because if you now hit on your prospects a ton, and I know it's a crapshoot, but it doesn't mean it's impossible to be good. We've seen guys that are good. If you are savvy enough to make deadline deals when it's appropriate, and you know what? This guy's been hurt 18 times. I don't think I'm going to trade for him. Like, this is the conversation of, and this is where I think the Pohlads fell woefully short. Aside from, and this is the interesting thing, when Carl bought the team, and he didn't love this, But if you guys recall, the story is Andy McPhail. He found a guy who I believe was an assistant with the Astros, who was a young up-and-coming and turned out baseball genius. Mm-hmm. Andy then said, I took a look around, said, lots of changes. He hired TK. Carl's like, you guys are both in your 30s. I don't know about this. I'm going to get a veteran advisor. But he allowed him to do it. And that is where Carl did, and this is a long time ago now, but that's where Carl made the move that the new ownership needs to make. I don't need you to go out and get star players across the board, but I do need you, if you are going to be, we want to be the Rays, we want to be one of those good young teams, you have to have the infrastructure where a guy like Falvey is absolutely beyond reproach in how outstanding he is. And that's a different conversation, but it is incredibly important. And that's where I think the Pohlads never had a shot. They never knew who was out there now.
Yeah. It kind of feels like when Pohlad touts the 8-year track record of Derek Falvey, I'm gonna consider his 8-year track record over a 6-week bad stretch. To me, that opens up, okay, let's look at the 8-year track record.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's compare it to the rest of the league. And if your standard is, make the playoffs 2 or 3 times in an expanded playoff field they've had more or as many late season collapses. Well, they've had more late season collapses than playoff series wins. But when he touts that 8-year track record as let's put this on a mantle and let's pay attention to what matters.
Right.
That tells you what the expectations are among the ownership group, which are not very high. They're not very high. I think, and Terry did an amazing job for a long time. Mm-hmm. But it got his second time around, it just wasn't clicking, and it felt like the game had evolved in some certain ways analytically.
Yep.
But you're right. Terry was the one that had to kind of say, you know what, I'll just remove myself. Because the year or two before that, I believe Jim Pohlad said, Terry has a job for life. And while Terry had earned a lot of leeway and respect as a really good general manager, right, to let anyone know in any line of work that you have a job for life regardless of performance is another reflection of low expectations, low bar. Let's just have some people in place that we mostly trust to not be a train wreck. It's a bigger pain in the ass for us because we're not that interested, quite frankly, in being all in on a baseball franchise. And just having someone that can do the day-to-day job and not completely drive us into the ditch than it is having the next Theo Epstein or to have that. If you were fiery and competitive, you certainly wouldn't come out before the season ends this year and say condescendingly, I think we know that Derek Falvey knows what he's doing here. After I think you'd make him sweat. You'd literally to hold people accountable. Yes. You would do an evaluation, even if it was just to show the fans that you care. So anyway, Dex, any final thoughts from you on this before?
I know that we're just under the assumption I think that's the word I keep using here. We're under the assumption that also a new ownership group is just going to come in here and make everything better. And also this process might take years. It could, the Nationals were up for sale. They pulled them back. The Angels were for sales. They pulled them back. I'm going to believe this won't take a year, but I think we also have to be a little careful too of, hey, this is going to happen just like the Orioles sale, where 3 months later there's a brand new ownership group ready to rock. I think the Pohlads are more strategic than just putting a team on the market with the shrug emoji of, oh yeah, we'll see if we get an offer we like. I'm leaning they're going to sell within the year, but it also we need to kind of figure out a realistic timeline of when the new ownership group comes in. And then the second piece of that is just because they're getting new ownership, they probably aren't going to spend to the levels of the top teams in baseball, but you can definitely breathe life into a fan base a la Mark Lohr and Alex Rodriguez to at least be happy with your owners. And the Pohlads have done, this was the angriest I have ever seen Twins fans at them. And it showed at the ballpark this year. And if you only have Rocco and Falvey, who you believe in, which is your decision to believe in, as the faces to build around, and hey, these are our guys, that also isn't working too well with your fan base. So there's still a lot of tentacles, in my opinion, that have to kind of play out with this.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know how many more of these ownership conversations where everything we've probably said all of our thoughts for now,
Well,
and we've got more off-season
It's
fodder
people
to
defending
turn to.
them, though. I didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
Like, that's what sets me off is this sudden, well, you know, and I mean, it's contrarian, and in our business, it's cool to be contrarian, but I'm siding with the fans here. That's what got me. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not
Well,
going
the
to
fans drive the business too. The fans drive the business, and to sort of
Yeah.
pat the fans on the head and say, I think, yes, the payroll argument can be a little dense and lack nuance, and I think we've approached that in a certain way on this show. But their frustration, maybe it's coming out sideways, and payroll is like one of you guys brought that up. Payroll is like the thing that you latch onto,
Right.
but it goes beyond payroll, as we talked about. So,
Yep.
anyways, that was the SKOR North Twins Show here on a Monday. Feisty off-season editions. Judd, you have a random baseball take before we say goodbye?
Oh, I do. And it actually ties into our entire conversation thus far. And it's this. So I think it was Royce talked about and also wrote about that the Twins need to strip things down and like start again or don't go out and sign guys. But I'll say this one. A really fun team, a really great story of the 2024 season ended up being the Detroit Tigers, who were just dead in like June and into July. Javi Baez gets hurt. All of a sudden, he's gone. I mean, he was clearly a problem. They start to take off. Maeda was starting through like August and he was a disaster. And so they're like, you know what? We're going to change that up. He was shoved aside. I think the Tigers, my random baseball thought, are a great blueprint for the Twins now. And that is, I don't think that you need to go out and sign guys left and right now. I think you've got some really nice young pieces. It feels like they are accelerating timetables more now than they were, let's say, 4 years ago. Like Brooks Lee got here quick. Walker Jenkins could. My point is, I think that if you, first of all, get your act together from a PR standpoint, but second of all, play these kids, I think you're going to get fans back. And I think the Tigers showed that. Like, it's not like Detroit's trotting out a bunch of household names, right?
No, I would say this because I have a couple friends who work at the Ticket, the big sports station in Detroit.
Yep.
And so I kind of I follow them on social media and pay attention.
Yep.
Fans were pissed at that franchise throughout the winter and trade deadline.
Yep.
Because ownership and the front office did not. People thought they had an exciting young nucleus and they were just a piece or two away, and the organization did not only did not grant them those pieces in payroll, they traded Flaherty at the trade deadline.
Yep.
And Detroit in that clubhouse went on to win despite the organization not really believing
I'm just saying
what they could do.
What the Tigers did gives me hope that if you did go with more youth, I don't think it's a death knell. And I think it actually could be fun because the one thing I agree with, I think this show does across the board, is they're not going to go out and spend a ton. And I don't even think you have to. I think that's a short term, oh man, they got this guy and it works. And sometimes it doesn't work, especially in the pool that the Twins swim when it comes to the free agent market. But the Tigers, to me, that was a ton of fun. And it's a young club, and it's exciting. And I think the Twins actually have a decent opportunity. And they don't have Skubal, but they have more starting pitching depth. I think the Twins have the opportunity to capitalize on a similar thing. It's not going to be received super well at first, but if you start to win, people get more excited.
Well, Skubal chokes in big games anyway, so I don't know why you...
I felt bad for him. That was a tough man. Granny by Lane Thomas, who Cleveland did get at the deadline from the Nats, and who was horse bleep for like 3 weeks in Cleveland. And then
that crowd, when he hit that thing, that atmosphere. Oh,
that's
how about the pop in baseball?
That's a fun ballpark when it's at capacity. That's a loud,
and they cheat too.
Fun ballpark. They
changed the wind tunnels.
Completely cheated for left-handed hitters. It's a whole big thing.
It is
that somewhere.
But
anyway, that's my random baseball thought.
Judd's random baseball.
Get to know him too.
Take.
Get to know him too. The return of get to know him.
Even that is like 20 years old, man. The last time they had
20 years old, right?
2001.
1?
Yeah.
2001 too. So
I mean, great at campaign, but yes, very old.
Appreciate you guys hanging out with us here. Off-season, angry vitriol editions of the SKOR North Twins Show.